UNITAID.com. Welcome to one more show. As usual, we have one more rock star with us. Dr. Tess Lawrie, her name is not now an unknown for us. I still remember a few months ago, somebody forwarded me her message to the Prime Minister talking about ivermectin and said, hey, have you heard of this doctor's message? And I did not. So that was the first time I came across her work and her message. And since then, she has skyrocketed with her messages, with her service towards humanity. And I think it is very interesting that people can feel and know who is trying to sincerely help them at this evil, bad time. So, Dr. Tess Lawrie, thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for your work.
Thank you for inviting me, Naveen.
Yeah, absolutely correct. So great to have you here. A couple of things. So first of all, for brief introduction, and then I'll ask you about yourself as well. So Dr. Tess Lawrie is the director of the Evidence-Based Medicine Consultancy Limited. Dr. Lawrie, about the cool beans here, the folks who are here. We have been working together for about a year.
I'm afraid you've just frozen for me, so I can't hear your question.
Okay, so
I'm going to assume you're asking me about my company.
Yes. So can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, so sorry about that. Sorry about that. So the cool beans here are very much aware of the medical research work. They understand the confidence intervals, they understand the p-values, they understand the significance of some work or not significance of the research data. So when you are discussing the research, please feel free to discuss in those terms, and we are totally be able to find you. So tell us a little bit, let's start with you. What is your introduction and what is your work?
Okay, so I usually do evidence synthesis to support clinical practice guidelines. And I have a small team that works with me, and we do systematic reviews, and then we put that evidence into evidence to decision frameworks for guideline panels to make recommendations on interventions for clinical practice. At the moment, I have a number. Well, before ivermectin sort of interrupted, I was busy with two WHO guidelines, as well as a paper that I'm co-writing for the Lancet, and also a couple of systematic reviews for Cochrane. So that's kind of the general work that we've been busy with over the past few months and going forward. And then ivermectin came along, and it seemed like a really important area to get involved in, and I've kind of just needed to keep going because there really hasn't been an opportunity to hand over the evidence and to see some progress. And so I was just telling you earlier what I've decided to do is to change direction with the company and open a community interest company. So it will be a not-for-profit company. And that will enable me to undertake work that's not commissioned necessarily from an organizational body, but rather either mandated by the people who, by what's important to people, what needs to be researched for the public good, really. So that's kind of the way we're going, and I need to expand my team because there seems to be really a lot that needs to be done.
I love this, and so thank you very much. Well, it blows my mind that as much as during this time, there are companies, big pharma, who are just looking after increasing their interest while not looking at people's interest. Then there are, in this time, there are people who have actually changed themselves to become more service oriented, to serve even more. And you are one of them. Thank you very much. We are very, very grateful to Dr. Paul Merrick, Dr. Pierre Corey, to you and your work. I want to quickly show your, so Cool Beans, you are here. Thank you very much for being here. Welcome. This is Dr. Lawrie's LinkedIn. So please feel free to connect to see her work. Then here is a fundraiser from her GoFundMe for her work. So I am really, really grateful that she has decided to change her approach to work from working for the organizations and what they are looking to research, from there to what you are looking for research and figuring out what are the topics of your interest. For example, right now, ivermectin. So I think that that is a great work that she is doing and great approach, and needs to be supported whichever way you can support her. You can share her videos, fine. You can send her a message to say, hey, thank you very much, keep going. That is great. You can donate here to her fundraisers. That is great. You can suggest a topic to say, can we talk about this topic? That is great. So whichever way you can participate, we will have to take care of ourselves together at this time. So after this, we're going to have these questions as well that are here. But any of you who is interested in seeing that, how does ivermectin work? There is a link here in the description as well to this video. It is a 6 minutes video. You can watch that. So back to Dr. Lawrie. So once again, thank you very much. Once again, thank you very much for Cool Beans to be here. Dr. Lawrie, tell us the news yesterday from WHO. They came out and they said, ivermectin, it's as good as dance.
You've frozen again for me. I don't know why, but I'm going to. I heard you say about the yesterday we had the news from WHO.
Correct. So the question was, WHO came out. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Yeah. So WHO came out and they said ivermectin's role function is as good as chance. What does that mean for us? What are they saying? What does it mean? How does that align with the work you have done?
Well, it's very inconsistent with the evidence that we have on ivermectin. So what I've done today, and it's very, obviously I haven't had time to look fully at the evidence that they have presented, but I wanted to share with you my first impressions and some of the evidence in relation to where we are now with the latest data as well. So can I share my screen with you, and I'll just run through a few slides?
Absolutely, please do.
Okay, so yeah, my intention is just to update everyone on the evidence presented by WHO to support their recommendation against ivermectin. So why is it important? Why are we wanting WHO to give us a recommendation on ivermectin? Well, there's been a large number of clinical trials, both randomized trials and observational trials, as well as observational studies on ivermectin over the past nine months or so. We know that developing and testing new medicines is expensive, and it takes years to establish the benefits and the risks. And repurposed medicines can be very cost effective. For example, dexamethasone is being used now for COVID in hospital patients. And also we know the safety profiles of these medicines. Ivermectin was really used for COVID in many cities, states, and countries around the world. So it really, has been a burning question as to, when it's going to get approved by the WHO. On the 18th of January, so the first review that WHO commissioned was in collaboration with UNITAID, and this was published on the 18th of January on Research Square's preprint server. The lead of the review was Dr. Andrew Hill, who's a research virologist at Liverpool University in the UK, and in that review, he and his team found 18 randomized controlled trials. And their main outcome was death. And they found 6 randomized controlled trials that reported this outcome. And out of these 6 trials, there were 1,255 people participating. So this is called a forest plot. These are the studies down the side here, the 6 studies that were included. There were 14 deaths in the ivermectin arm out of just over 600, and there were 57 deaths in the control arm. And this is about a 2% death rate compared with a 10% death rate in the control arm across these studies. And what this risk ratio says is that ivermectin led to a 75% reduction in deaths.
So can I ask you a question here? And
Yes.
this is the burning question, and I think we have all been, the cool beans have been waiting for you to help us understand this a little more. When WHO or CDC or FDA or other organizations, they come out and they say the quality of the studies is not good, the amount of data is not good, we cannot trust this, it shows maybe some improvement, but we need to do more clinical trials, don't use it otherwise. Tell me, when you are in the business of, and I mean that in a good way, you are in the business of looking at data, collecting that data, putting that together, how bad is this data, if not
Okay,
good?
look, these are randomized controlled trials, which are considered the highest type of study design, the best type, the gold standard type of study design. But there are different ways in which even the best type of study design can be undermined. An important way is, we want to know how people were actually randomized in the study. Were they, and randomized, when you enroll a person, they need to have an equal chance of getting the treatment or the control option. And so when we evaluated studies for this outcome in particular, we wanted to know that the randomization procedure had been was clearly described, and that the allocation of the treatment was concealed. So the person would need to have an equal chance exactly of getting the ivermectin or the control. They couldn't, you couldn't decide, the person couldn't decide, who the doctor enrolling the patient couldn't decide, I think this person is going to go on this treatment because I prefer that treatment, sort of thing. So we want to make sure the randomization process is well done. In terms of blinding is less of a problem when you're dealing with an outcome like death, because if you've got a good randomization process, then death is a very objective outcome. It's not like time to discharge or something, or because if the doctor really favored ivermectin and wanted to make it look good, he could discharge all his patients on ivermectin early if he knew what treatment they were getting. So for us, the most important criterion for the death outcome was good randomization. And some of these trials did have a problem with their randomization. And where we weren't sure, so what we did and what's not clear with the other reviews, like Andrew Hill's review and with the WHO and all these other bodies that have been evaluating the evidence, is we emailed the authors of the papers, and where we needed clarification, we asked them, how did you do this? Could you explain? And so ours was a very rigorous process. But as I say, I'm not sure how these others were done. And in actual fact, although with Andrew Hill's review, for example, there wasn't a formal grading of the certainty of the evidence. It was just a report that there was a 75% reduction in deaths. So so what one does, back to the quality of the trials, in my opinion, these trials overall are of a reasonable quality. There were some issues with there were some that were weaker than others, but for all intents and purposes, these were studies done by doctors in low and middle income countries who were used to working with ivermectin, because it's used more widely there in many countries for tropical diseases, parasitic diseases. So they were used to working with the medicine. And when the COVID outbreak came along, they thought, well, what have we got in our arsenal? Because we're not going to be able to afford monoclonal antibodies, etc. So let's try these things that we know work against a number of the bugs that we've got here. And so that's how many of these doctors decided, okay, well, we'll do a study. And if we do a study, well, it's going to help because we'll be able to show people in other countries and other governments who maybe not that familiar that this is a useful medicine. So So these doctors had no conflicts of interest, in my opinion, and
Makes sense.
yeah.
So then, if I can ask you one more question, and you can totally ignore this question or pass on this one. The question is this: you have worked with the WHO as a consultant as well. You know the kind of requirements that are necessary for good studies. You know the kind of requirements that are used to look at data that is good. And you are looking at this data and you're saying, hey, when I look at the data in accumulation, in the metadata itself, I feel that the data is good enough and I see that there is a compelling reason to use this. And here I can read on your slide 75% reduction in deaths with ivermectin. Why are folks, WHO is made up of more folks who are, some of them are employees, but they are doing the same work that you do or other consultants. Why are they not seeing this? And this is not just WHO, CDCs, FDAs, UK's.
Well, I'm not sure. It's just around ivermectin, things seem to be a bit different. I'd like to actually, Dr. Bean, there's a few slides. So this is the slide from the review that was done on the 18th of January. It's not the latest findings. So if you'd like, I can carry on, and then you can see what the latest review findings.
I would love it. Please do.
Okay. So I just wanted to say here, after this review was done, Andrew Hills presented in his slide presentations. He said, we're waiting for more data, and the more data is coming at the end of February, or the end of March. So we're going to wait for those data. So then we did our systematic review because we were busy more or less the same time. And this is Andrew Bryant, myself, and 5 others. And we found at that time, obviously, because there were a number of trials, it was evolving, and it still is, we found 21 randomized controlled trials. 18 were on ivermectin for COVID treatment, and 3 were on ivermectin for COVID prevention. And out of these 18, 13 were involved in the main outcome, death. So Andrew Hill's review had 6, and we had found 13, and almost 2,000 people. So this was our meta-analysis. We separated into mild to moderate COVID and severe COVID, and then there was one study that included all, and we couldn't separate them. So we had all of these studies looking at mild disease, mild to moderate, and then these ones were severe. And when we put them all together, we got a risk ratio of 0.32 and a confidence interval of 0.14 to 0.72, which meant a 68% reduction in deaths. And this confidence interval was equal to a 28% reduction to an 86% reduction. So it's a fairly wide reduction, but nevertheless a big reduction, even if it's at the lower end, the 28%. We did grade our evidence, and we were very strict because we already knew there was already a lot of, ivermectin was a topic for discussion. We didn't want to overstate the strength of the evidence, and we didn't want to understate it either. But we ended up, because there were limitations with the studies when you strictly, assess them. And so we said this was low to moderate certainty. Now, low certainty just means that this effect there may be a reduction of 68% in deaths. And if you have moderate certainty evidence, there's probably a reduction of 68% in deaths. Still a huge reduction. It's just, whether it's more how big is the reduction rather than whether it reduces deaths. To me, it's clear that ivermectin reduces death. It's a question of, how much.
Excellent. And I want to, if you can please stay on this slide for a second while we discuss with the cool beans as well. So cool beans, as you can see here, 68. So this is a more stricter version of the metadata collection and processing by Dr. Lawrie and her team and her colleagues, where, as you heard her, that she said, we try to not take that data that may have made this message weaker. So you could think that she would have applied the best stringent, stricter methods to then come back and say, you know what, the range is from 28% to 86%, but 68% is what we are seeing. And that is pretty good, even if there are 10% reduction, 20% reduction, 30, it is reduction in death we are talking about. And
yeah,
so
it's a very important outcome.
yeah, so it is not that you would cough or not cough. This is a person would die or not die, or out of 100 people some people would die or not. 68% reduction. Those people who are saved are our family members, they are our friends. You have seen me over the year that I lost 4 people at various times due to COVID, and how disastrous it becomes. I was the one who knew them, but when it happens to a family, the family is devastated. Cheap solution, available solution. I just cannot imagine why they are not letting it go more openly. I still have the same question, and Dr. Lawrie, if you wanted to continue, please do. I still have the same question. Why are they not approving it? Why are they not seeing what we are seeing? What is wrong?
Well, I think let's leave that till the end. So we also found other important outcomes. For example, improvement. We had 4 trials with 681 participants, suggesting that they were 34% more likely to improve if you had ivermectin, and deterioration. 74% fewer patients were likely to deteriorate. So mainly to 74% fewer patients deteriorating in a given time frame. And then, of course, there's the effect of ivermectin on COVID-19 infection if you use it for prevention. And the data showed that ivermectin may reduce COVID-19 infection by around 86%. So it's just from the randomized controlled trials, and we all know there's plenty of evidence from the observational studies too, which in this particular exercise we are not using. So WHO came out recommending against ivermectin for COVID. They were only looking at therapeutics, so they weren't looking at ivermectin as prophylaxis. And this is as of yesterday. So who made the recommendation? Well, the WHO COVID-19 team has been working with McMaster's University, Professor Bram Rockfer, who was the chair of the meeting, also the guidance support. He was involved in the methods and also in the systematic review team.
Excellent. And Dr. Lawrie, my apologies for the interjection. I just wanted to remind the viewers, the listeners, the Cool Beans once more. Cool Beans, what you're hearing is not Dr. Mubin presenting a study and just going over that. This discussion is different. The data that is being presented by Dr. Lawrie is different because it is a meta-analysis. What she has done is she has gone over hundreds of studies, as you saw, and then collected data from them, filtered that, scrutinized it, then created a meta-analysis and presented it to you. This is not one study being reviewed. This is all or majority of the studies. This data is really important and compelling. So sorry, back to you. I just cannot hold my excitement.
Also just point out that it's not me. It's I work with a team of people, and 2 of our reviewers did the data extraction of those studies. So
absolutely,
I'm presenting it to you, but the data extraction of those studies has been done by 2 independent reviewers, and then
absolutely. And please feel free to give them a shout out.
There was some biases compared and collated and so on. So it's a rigorous process. So the latest WHO meta-analysis for death, they found 16 RCTs. Now, Andrew Hill's original analysis found 18 RCTs, so I'm not sure which ones they've left out. I had been under the impression there would be additional trials added because that's what we've been waiting for. But to my knowledge, there are new trials, but nevertheless, the number's gone down instead of up. So this is the report on death. We've got an odds ratio. I don't know if this is pen work. No, but an odds ratio of 0.19, which is equivalent to an 81% reduction in deaths. And the confidence interval is very narrow, 64% to 91%. So it's much narrower than the confidence interval that we've got with our 13 trials above. This was based on 1,419 people in 7 studies. And so we've got 13 studies. We had 13 studies in our analysis in February. So this only has 7. And then what they show is that the absolute effects, if you're in the standard care arm, there 70 people will die out of 1,000. And if you're in the ivermectin arm, 14 people will die out of 1,000. So this is looking pretty good. And the difference is 56 less per 1,000 if you get ivermectin. So 56 fewer deaths per 1,000. And the confidence interval is 63 fewer to 44 fewer. So whatever way you look at it, their analysis suggests that there's a significant reduction in deaths if you get ivermectin. I'll just move on from there. However, this is a bit peculiar because this is the only forest plot I could find in their guideline, and it shows 5 studies, not 7. So, and they've grouped them according to their assessment of risk of bias, and in this. I presume perhaps when I'm thinking maybe there were studies at even higher risk of bias that they've just removed from this analysis. It's not clear. But nevertheless, it still shows a clear reduction of 74% deaths. But there's not very many. There's only 31 now. It's not a lot. It's not a high number of events, shall we say. But clearly, in favor of ivermectin. Sorry, I just found it rather peculiar that these studies, the Hashim, Al-Ghazal, Al-Qamut, and Mahmoud trials, they no longer appear. They're no longer being considered in the evidence synthesis. And these were studies that were originally included in Andrew Hill's meta-analysis. So it seems like there were studies that were included in Andrew Hill's meta-analysis in January that are now no longer being included in the evidence synthesis related to ivermectin in the new WHO guideline. So the other thing that I found, strange is that Gonzalez and Lopez are in the low risk of bias group. And these 2 studies are actually fairly high risk of bias. Lopez Medina is a study that was published in the JAMA journal about 2 weeks ago, and there was quite a lot of, concern amongst people who are in ivermectin research because it seemed to have a number of issues, and the issues are fairly plain to see in the paper itself. I actually have been recruiting systematic reviewers to help us with the workload that we have at the moment, and as an exercise, I asked them to look at this study and do the data extraction and assessment of risk of bias. And they all, and some of them are, less experienced and some are more experienced, but Lopez Medina always comes up as high risk of bias. So even, and that's pretty independent, and people who are not necessarily even in the ivermectin business, shall we say, of information business. So it seems like for the WHO to come up with a low risk of bias for this study, and indeed the Gonzalez study, is surprising. And in any event, I mean, this is also surprising. Because when you do a systematic review, you have a protocol, and your protocol dictates what sort of analyses you're going to do. Now, with Andrew Hill's review, and also with this review, it's not clear what the protocol is, because, for example, in our protocol, we stated that we would sort studies according to their disease severity, which is what we've done. And we said that we would we would do sensitivity analyses to exclude those studies at high risk of bias, which we did. And we said we'd look at studies that use single doses rather than multiple doses, which we did. So we did a number of sensitivity analyses which we pre-specified, whereas, with, I think, with this, it's not clear, why they're suddenly grouped, not suddenly, why the studies are grouped in this way, and why these certain studies are missing. And it's just not clear what selection criteria they've used to include studies. But given all the studies out there, it's rather disappointing to see that these are the only studies they've decided to include in their meta-analysis.
So tell me this then. Why do other scientists, just like you, so I was looking at Brian Lawrie all, so just like you and your team, your colleagues, why can't others find out that this sleight of hand is happening?
I'm afraid I've lost you again, Dr.
Sorry.
Bean.
Can you hear me? Let me know when you can hear me.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, so I'm saying that why can't other teams, other scientists find this sleight of hand that is happening and kind of raise their voice and say, this is not right, this is something not correct?
Well, I think people are raising or trying to raise their voices, but it's been very difficult even to get our work published. There are at least 4, possibly 5 reviews on ivermectin that are sitting on preprint servers. We can't get them published in reviews, so in journals. So whilst there's this call for more studies and all of that, there's a real failure to look at what we have, and we have a huge number of studies and reviews that are for all intents and purposes published, but they're on the preprint servers because we can't get journals to publish them.
Got it. Please continue. This is an interesting meta-analysis for death.
Yes.
Yes, please.
So this, sorry, I keep just jumping around. Here we go. So so this was a study. This was a comment in the in a summary comment in the guideline, which says the guideline development group inferred that almost all well-informed patients would want to receive ivermectin only in the context of a randomized trial, given that the evidence left a very high degree of uncertainty and effect on mortality, and there was a possibility of harms, such as treatment-associated severe adverse events. Now, I found this very curious statement because I find this word curious, inferred, and did they agree, or was it suggested? I don't know. And then almost all well-informed patients would want to receive ivermectin only in the context of a randomized trial. It's very strange statements, and then given that the evidence left a very high degree of uncertainty, well, we've seen a huge effect on mortality. So I want to look at their degree of uncertainty, as well as there's a sudden statement on the possibility of harm, such as treatment-associated severe adverse events. So let's see what they say about this. So with severe adverse events, they find an odds ratio of 3, and the confidence interval is 0.77 to 12. Now, and it's based on data from 584 people in 3 studies. So this confidence interval crosses the line of no difference. So it means
it's invalid.
There's no clear difference between the 2 groups. Okay. Nevertheless, they say that this means ivermectin may increase the risk of serious adverse events.
How can they say that? It is clearly crossing over from 0.77 to 12.09. How could they infer this message from this?
Well, this is exactly my point. As I say, I've just had a look at this today, and I haven't been able to dig more deeply because there isn't much transparency. The forest plots are not there in the document, and one can't. But anyway, these just simply this doesn't match that. This result does not match this interpretation. And then here again, we have mortality. So this is the mortality from the forest plot that I showed you earlier. No, it's not. This is based on the 7 patients, 1,400. Now, we don't have a forest plot for this, but this is a very narrow confidence interval. It's 0.09 to 0.36. This is a very tight confidence interval, and yet very precise, shall we say. And yet it says here very low certainty due to very serious imprecision, which means that they've downgraded twice downgraded using the grade approach to assessing certainty of evidence. They've downgraded twice to get very low certainty. Now, this is not a precise, not imprecise at all. It's very precise. So again, this does not match that. And then they have a statement saying the effect of ivermectin on mortality is uncertain. With a very low, in fact, you would have the effect of ivermectin on mortality is very uncertain.
This is what is making me upset, that their statement...
It's missing a very there, or there's an extra very here that shouldn't be there at all, and it shouldn't be a very low grade, because a very low means we don't know whether it increases deaths or decreases deaths. And we do know it decreases deaths.
Yeah, so there is a cool bean here who is commenting, Nick. He himself is a physician as well. So he's saying that essentially they lied. So what they're doing is they are actually putting the data in front of you and then misstating it.
Yes.
Put the same one place.
It's just, you start questioning yourself when you see this, because you think, am I seeing things? Anyway, so this is our latest meta-analysis for deaths, and we've included, so now there are 15 studies. We've included the Lopez Medina study and also the Gonzalez study. These were studies that have been published in the last couple of weeks, or data that's become available. And you can see even with these studies, there's still a preponderance of deaths in the control arm in those studies, and with this we get a 62% reduction in deaths, and the range is 26 to confidence interval is 26 to 80%. And I think what you can see is no matter what study you add, if it's it might be that that it's conducted in mild disease and then there's not going to be many deaths, or it might be in severe disease and then there will be more deaths. You can see, or it might be there might be other medicines that are given along with, because it's unlikely that ivermectin is going to be given on its own in very severe disease and so on. There would be other medicines that are going along with it. So you can see that it doesn't really matter, what you add, what you subtract, what group you're looking at. What severity of disease, what you're adding with it, it seems to reduce deaths by a lot.
And I think that
here, even with the latest data, so across these 15 trials, we've got 30 deaths out of 1,200 in the ivermectin arm, and 89, almost 90 in the 1,138. So again, we're looking at 2% versus 7.5% or something like that.
Wow.
And then we'd probably, we haven't graded this evidence, but I would suggest we're certainly nudging towards moderate certainty, and I can't imagine that one would ever need any more studies based on this, even though we know there are studies ongoing. So yeah, the issue of safety now.
So, Dr. Lawrie, before we continue, I want to show once again about you and your work to the Cool Beans who have just joined. So Cool Beans, once again, we have Dr. Tess Lawrie from UK with us. She is a independent researcher. She has been working with WHO and many other organizations to put the data. This is her business. And again, I say it in a good way. This is her business, to pull the data together, to make sense of it, to be able to support or say, hey, this clinical practice may not be right because here is what the data is showing. So she is the master in this domain, and her colleagues, so Bryant, Dr. Lawrie, and colleagues, they have pulled the data together for ivermectin, and they are showing that data. And not only that, what they are showing is that WHO's data that WHO is showing, there are so many. I just looked at that one slide and it made my mind blow away, that the data is showing something else and they're writing something else, and they know that they can get away with that. I wanted to quickly share with Dr. Lawrie's credentials here so that you can help support her. So this is her LinkedIn, and I saw a comment that if everybody doesn't have a LinkedIn, then what should we do? She has a fundraiser going on as well on GoFundMe. The link to this fundraiser is in the description of this video as well, so you can go and find it there. I would request you to support her as much as you can. As I said before, sending her a thank you would work. Sending her a topic to work on would work. Giving her another study for ivermectin, donating her, financially supporting her, whichever way you can support. I think we have to get out of this mess by ourselves. Our medical leadership is not showing leadership. They are taking sides at this time. Unfortunately, I think my opinion is they are not on our side. They are on the side of maybe big pharma, maybe money, maybe political interests, whatever those are. I do not know, but they don't seem to be on our side. So once again, Dr. Lawrie, thank you so much for your work. I'm going to once again stop my little discussion and go back to you. So please, yes.
Okay. Well, I just briefly wanted to talk about the safety again of ivermectin because,
Yes.
you know, even though, in actual fact, you know, even though WHO used that reference, you know, to show that, they're suggesting that ivermectin may be associated with severe adverse events. There were very few, especially with that wide confidence interval. It suggests that in that study there might have been 5 adverse events or something that they're referring to that had led them to make that statement about ivermectin maybe being associated with severe adverse events. Whereas, you know, we know we have all this information on ivermectin safety, and we know that 3.5 billion ivermectin doses have been given, and more. So it has a very well-established safety profile, especially when we look at the VIGI-Access WHO collaboration with Uppsala University in Sweden, the VIGI-Access Pharmacovigilance Database, which registers adverse events. So here you can see for ivermectin since 1992, there's 16 deaths registered on this database, and as of today, 4,700 adverse events. And if you compare it to other things that we're using now for COVID, the remdesivir, you know, in the last year has 467 versus and over 5,700 adverse events. And the vaccines have got 2,785 deaths registered and over 350,000 adverse events. So you can see this is an extremely safe medicine, and that's on the WHO Uppsala University database. And just to continue on, you know, the other things that it's not apparent whether they were considered at all in the latest WHO recommendation is the fact that there's, you know, in African countries where they run programs, mass administration programs for onchocerciasis, which is a type of parasitic worm that causes river blindness. The countries that have this program have had much lower death rates from COVID, much lower infection rates than countries that don't have these programs of ivermectin that's administered via the community. There's also country case studies, Peru, Uttar Pradesh, and many other countries. I'm sure you've seen in other presentations that I've done where where as soon as they've started using ivermectin, 4 to 6 weeks later, their death rates drop off. Now, these data have been presented to WHO because Juan Chemi Quintero, who's the data analyst who's been doing all of these country case studies and monitoring, has presented to the team there. So we know that they have these data and they're aware of it. There's also studies done among the elderly that show that ivermectin is really safe in the elderly and can be used against COVID safely to prevent and treat. There's, in terms of acceptability, I mean, everybody is interested and would find a medicine that's safe, cheap, and effective to be very acceptable because it reduces deaths and looks like it improves all sorts of outcomes associated with COVID. It's great for equity because you don't have to be rich to get access to it, and it's great for the most vulnerable, like the elderly and those working in hospitals and frontline workers generally. We know that it's very feasible because it doesn't need cold storage or anything. It's a tablet. It can be posted to people. It can be, had over the counter. It's cheap. Obviously, feasibility and cost often go hand in hand. It's very, very cheap. It can be manufactured by anyone because it's out of patent, and any pharmaceutical company can apply to manufacture it. Other considerations, for example, emergency use authorization of medicines has been based on the fact that they may be effective. And certainly with ivermectin, we have more evidence than may be effective. We know that it's probably very effective. Already discussed the safety, and there's many, many other observational studies. There's expert opinion. There's also some studies, as one or two small studies on long COVID, and also it's good for prevention. So there's many, many other considerations that don't seem to have been taken into account in the latest WHO recommendation against ivermectin.
Excellent. Thank you so much for this talk. And thank you very much for presenting this data as well, and comparing that data to the data misuse as we saw with some other organizations as well. And for the cool beans, this is what is interesting to see, that the same data, one organization goes in and picks and chooses a fewer studies and then comes back. Even then the data is actually showing it to be effective, and then their inference, the statement is incorrect, right? Disaligned with the data, and they know they can get away with that. It just makes me mad, and it also gives me even more respect for Dr. Lawrie and her colleagues' work. So, Dr. Lawrie, would you like to take some questions as well?
Yes, I can't remember how many slides I have left, but I'd be happy to.
So if you would like to present more, this is excellent.
I was just going to say that the bird recommendation, so the bird panel we put together, there was, at least 65 stakeholders from around the world, and we all sat down, I showed them the evidence, they made judgments, and they came up with, agreed on a recommendation, and that was that ivermectin should be recommended for the prevention and treatment of COVID, to reduce morbidity and mortality associated with COVID, and to prevent COVID-19 infection amongst those at higher risk. So now we haven't, unfortunately, the WHO and obviously the European Medicines Agency, the NIH, the FDA, the Canadian authorities, the Australian authorities, the South African authorities, many authorities do not seem to agree with us, but I would just like to say that ours is the most thorough and comprehensive meta-analysis. Dr. Drbeen, you mentioned, other countries not agreeing, and in actual fact, I've been asked to examine the evidence, the Australian evidence, and when I look there, they're using, say, 6 studies, and they're different. They're not the same studies that are being presented by WHO, and then there's the South African evidence, and they're using a review based on 2 studies, and that's different from the evidence used by the Australians. It just seems like these organizations are cherry picking what the studies they want to use in their reviews. The one thing they all agree on, though, is that the Lopez Medina study is a very high quality study, showing no difference in a very mild in mild patients. So yes, there is something very peculiar going on, and I'd be happy to take some questions. Yes, I thought I could just show you this as well before.
Absolutely.
Is that okay? This is. I just wanted to give you an example of the sorts of evidence that can lead to approvals and change in favor of a treatment. So this is the WHO's approval of ivermectin as an essential medicine for scabies, and this was in 2018. This evidence led to ivermectin being added as an essential medicine to the essential medicines list for scabies, and it was based on a forest plot. This forest plot, which has 600 people involved, you can see what it shows is that ivermectin doesn't work quite as well as permethrin against scabies, because permethrin cream is an anti-scabies treatment. And this was considered to be low certainty evidence from 6 randomized trials. They also considered, though, they didn't only consider this evidence, they also considered information and data from countries using ivermectin for scabies. And they also considered that ivermectin was very safe, and in the document it suggests that there may be 11 adverse events per million treatments. And it also mentions that ivermectin is very cheap at around $2.90 per 100 tablets, which is about 3 cents per tablet. So based on this, ivermectin was added to the essential medicines list for scabies. So that's it. I've got one more slide I'll show you at the end.
Thank you very much. Once again, thank you so much for your data-rich and analysis-rich discussion. I am actually fortunate that the Cool Bean, we have been over the past year learning to understand these data points and understand the value of the p-values and the value of the significance of confidence intervals, crossing over the unities and so on. So thank you so much that you have presented us that data. And it kind of made me, there were times during this talk that I just started going mad, and I had to kind of lean back and stop myself just by seeing the inaccuracies that we were seeing from the interpretations from others. So with this, thank you very much for your work. It is important, it is golden, it is saving us. Ready for some questions? So Dr. Lawrie, ready for some questions?
Yes, I am, sorry.
Okay, yeah. Excellent. So let's start. So team, Cool Beans, if you have put your questions again, please do me a favor. You'll have to type them again. I'm going to mix the questions from YouTube, previously added question to Twitter, to the questions here. So Dr. Lawrie, I'm going to share my screen and we'll go over some of the questions. Paul Borges is saying, thanks, Dr. Tess and Dr. Bean. Very useful presentation, which were very well done. Thank you very much. And I'm going to go here to YouTube. So this was our announcement for your being here. So Alange Brown says, question, when will we see ivermectin being prescribed in Ireland and the UK after the recommendation of the Bird meeting, which she participated in?
We are, so you've frozen again, Dr. Mabeen, but in terms of Ireland and the UK, we are doing everything we can to get ivermectin evidence in front of the authorities. So we have, and also in front of doctors, because doctors, certainly in Ireland, they have ivermectin in their, on their list of medicines, but in the UK, ivermectin is only available off license. So we've got a lot further to go. We're doing everything we can to raise awareness amongst doctors, amongst politicians, and also with the authorities. So just stay posted and keep petitioning and writing to your MPs and doctors.
Thank you very much. This was my question, that how can we help? So you've already answered that. Doug Gross says, please ask her to consider reaching out to regulatory agencies of the rest of the Anglosphere. I suspect that if one country steps up, the rest will follow.
Yes, well, certainly we have been, we've sent the evidence to Canada, the States, Australia, Belgium. We've sent it to France. We've sent the evidence really to, if anyone sends us the emails of their regulatory authorities, we will send the evidence to those regulatory authorities. So
got it. Thank you very much. Dina H. might or Dina I might says, what about the WHO? So we just discussed that. Dina, thank you very much for your question. Jesus Save Me Today says, what should I include in a hospital research poster about censorship of ivermectin? How can we influence biased providers and administrators? So once again, how can we help?
Well, I will show you. So we're launching a public awareness campaign about setting ivermectin free, and I have a little clip I can show you at the end of the show. So the aim is we have some artists engaged and volunteering time, and we have a really wonderful public awareness campaign starting.
Awesome. So that is actually a great news that you have creatives, and now you
can perhaps you can use those in your posters and so on. You must feel free to use. We'll actually have a lot of resources we'll put on our website. We will have a bird website from next week, and there'll be a lot of resources on there that you can download and use for whatever purpose you like to promote the cause.
Awesome. Great. Thank you very much. Buzz Night Gear says, I have to ask what happened to the video Tess put up on Tuesday, 30th March. I see it, but can't find it anymore. Was any of your video blocked, censored, taken down?
We did have a video blocked. We had a video put onto the crowdfunder that was via YouTube, and that was taken down almost immediately.
Oh, wow. I can't. Anyway, so Dina says, Lancet Respiratory, will they ever publish your preprint? So
no, they won't. No, we had, it went through the peer review process, and as I say, the reviewers approved it, but the journal decided not to publish, so they won't publish it. We have submitted it elsewhere, but now it's in the system again, and it seems very slow, and goodness knows when we will hear, and whether it will be a positive answer or a negative answer.
Got it.
The new one data are accumulating, so we're thinking, well, maybe we've got to just keep on updating.
Got it. Josh, I did not catch your question. Maybe if you can send it to me again and I can directly ask Dr. Lawrie. Tara Pilo says, my housemate is sick with coronavirus and symptoms. We aren't sure if we should start the FLCC protocol without quercetin. We haven't been able to find okay. Do you have a favorite vitamin company? So Tara, I do not know who the question is for, but Dr. Lawrie, do you have any favorite vitamins or supplements company?
No, but I'm not a big fan of Amazon.
Okay, so we got that too. Excellent. And Tara, for me, I usually, my wife usually goes to Whole Food, and because we can only take vegetarian type or halal food, so she goes there and she brings vitamins from there. Jagathisa Naidu says, would it be safe to take ivermectin prior to the vaccination?
I'm not the best person to ask that. So, Dr. Bean, I don't know if you have a view on ivermectin and vaccination, but I certainly don't know.
So I'll give you two answers, Jagadisa. One from my own mechanism point of view, and then other one from Dr. Carvalho from Argentina. So Dr. Carvalho had said that, hey, I asked my patients to stop taking ivermectin 2 weeks before the vaccination and keep off of it for 2 weeks after the vaccination. So that is his advice. My opinion has been that ivermectin, because it does not interfere with the vaccine's function, so it is actually fine to continue taking ivermectin while the vaccination happens. Please remember that ivermectin interferes with the virus's function, because virus has certain enzymes that ivermectin can block, plus virus has certain cargo that it sends to nucleus that ivermectin can block, plus virus wants to connect with the ACE2 receptor that ivermectin can block. A vaccine doesn't do any of that, and because of that, a vaccine can successfully trigger your immune system and train it, and ivermectin, while present, will not interfere with that. So that is my opinion from a mechanism point of view. Let's go to, thank you very much for these answers, Dr. Lawrie. Let's look at this, and we have tons of questions. I haven't yet gone to the live side yet. So cool beans, I'll be there in a second. I want to just get some questions from here. So Dr. Lawrie, you can totally tell me when you're done and we can then request you to come back again as well if possible. I know your time is precious. So here is another question on Twitter from Corey Gunnels. Does Dr. Lawrie think any headway is being made with ivermectin gaining acceptance as standard of care treatment?
I think we were making some headway, but I think we've probably, the WHO has put us back a bit now. I think we are making headway. We were making headway, and then we had the European Medicines Agency statement saying we recommend against, and before that we were making headway, and then the FDA came out and said we recommend against. So we are making headway, but not with any help. There's certainly lots of obstacles.
Actually, more obstacles, you're correct. So KB says, would the best way for someone with mast cell activation syndrome to fight off COVID to take ivermectin? So they're basically asking MCAS and ivermectin.
I can see there's a question there from someone asking about mast cell activation syndrome and COVID and ivermectin. Well, there are people working on this now. I know of at least one doctor in the UK is very interested in this, and we're looking at. I think it's more to do with she's looking at it for long COVID, but I think it would be highly likely that if you have mast cell activation syndrome and you're basically in that at-risk group, that ivermectin probably would benefit you.
Makes sense. And I have seen that we have a few long haulers in Cool Beans as well, and some of them have had some good success with ivermectin. Some of them have reported that after using ivermectin and then stopping it, they go back to the long haul state. So I think it is it still needs to be understood a little more. I'm going to take some more. Sorry, Dr. Lawrie, you had a comment.
I was just going to say we are working on a study protocol at the moment to look at ivermectin for long COVID. So also that does require the the authorities to approve the use of ivermectin for a trial as such. But it does seem like that will be possible. There doesn't seem to be any I don't know what the barriers are to getting ivermectin approved for clinical trials, but hopefully it won't be as difficult as getting it approved for use.
Got it. And I am thinking about, so there are hundreds of questions now collected on both sides. I was thinking, and please tell me, even when we are live, very honestly and sincerely, would it be possible for you to come back once more and we go through the questions so that this video can stay within a reasonable time? Or should we do as much as we can now?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to come back again because also it'll give me more time. We'll also be able to see, what the aftermath is of this latest recommendation and its impact, because we'll have and I'll be able to give you feedback in terms of what the response has been from the authorities that we've reached out to based on this new recommendation. But I do want to show you, before we leave, I just want to show you a little bit, just a clip from our new...
So I'm going to take 5 more minutes of yours before you show this for some live questions. So number one, so Cool Beans, she's making a promise right in front of you that she'll come back and answer the questions here on the Twitter. So thank you for that. I still want to get some more questions in, maybe 2 or 3 from the live audience. They've been here since the morning. And then we'll watch what you have for us as well. So let's see some of the questions from the live audience. So here is Andrea. She's saying, I read recently there's a clinical trial from Oxford University with a partner study in COVID patients conducted here in Dublin. Do you have any information on this study?
I don't know too much about the study, but I believe it's in quite sick patients. So, yeah.
I see. So Nick Ariza says, any research Dr. Lawrie has come across regarding intranasal ivermectin administration for COVID?
No, I haven't come across any.
Frank says, how does WHO respond to your queries about how they use data, missing data, trials, or arrive at their results? Can you even ask WHO?
Well, I haven't even started that process. Obviously, I had some dialogue with Andrew Hill about his original analysis and my concerns about the conclusions there. But in terms of this, now, I'm not sure whether it's not transparent what they've derived where they've derived their data, and so so I don't know if people would like me now to then try and get this. I presume there will be a systematic review forthcoming that will then show the evidence that they've based their guideline recommendation on, and I presume that will be the McMaster's University review.
Got it. Next question is from Colin Hamill. I believe Colin is from UK.
Okay, I see there's a question there.
Yes. So can you hear me?
I wish I could get a meeting with Matt Hancock. Sorry, I can't. Sorry, Dr. Bean, your screen froze again, but I saw the question.
Thank you for answering. Then there is this next. Shinji speaks. Dr. Lawrie, great work. Can your team send the evidence to the Department of Health in Philippines?
Yes, I would love to do that. It would help if we could get an email and a person's name, because it can be very time-consuming trying to locate the people you want to get the evidence in front of.
Absolutely. And to all cool beans, if you want the evidence to go somewhere, please, Dr. Lawrie has said before as well, provide her who to send it to, and then I think their team can do it. So you would do some legwork for her, and then she can do the rest of the side. And on Philippines, it is sad that they just banned ivermectin, and so people are trying to figure out if they can. So Shinji, if you can get some contact emails or others, how do they send it to you, Dr. Lawrie? How do they send you the email?
There is a response form on my website on ebmc.co.uk, so you can fill in that response, and then we can send you, we can get your email from that.
Okay, so what I'll do is this, Cool Beans, after this meeting, I would request her website and the link to that form. I would post that on our YouTube, and I would tweet it out as well. You can use that to please keep it reasonable so she's not overwhelmed with comments or questions. Send her the links or the emails to which she can help you by sending the evidence. Kevin says, Dr. Lawrie, what medicine do you personally take weekly? I think in the COVID context, so any prophylaxis, anything else?
Yeah. Well, I don't take any other sorts of medicines. I do take supplements at the moment. I take vitamin D, I take multivit, I take vitamin C, and I take something that comes from the Himalayas high up. So yeah.
Excellent. Celtic says, Dr. Bean, can Dr. Lawrie upload her blocked video on another platform?
Yes, we've uploaded it onto Vimeo, so it is up on Vimeo. And I think if you click the link on the crowdfunding site, it takes you to the Vimeo website.
Excellent. So a couple of more questions, then we listen to the thing that you have, and then we stop. And we would be requesting you to please join us once more. Tube Sterini says, Dr. Lawrie, what therapeutics have been approved for treating COVID, and did they have more evidence than ivermectin?
Well, the only treatment that has been approved recommendation without conditions is dexamethasone. So the remdesivir has a conditional recommendation with WHO, and I did have a look at so it's conditionally. I think it's conditionally not recommended, but it's certainly that's a stronger recommendation than the one on ivermectin, which is definitely against. I haven't done a systematic review of the evidence on remdesivir, and that is something that I could undertake potentially. It's just a question of prioritizing our resource, our projects and resources at the moment.
Colin says, can you take me and a few other cool beans with you the next time you meet Matt Hancock so we can snarl at him?
Well, you might have a better chance of meeting Matt Hancock than me. So, let me know when you get
when you're going to go there. So a couple of more questions. Spot says, what is your opinion of taking twice monthly ivermectin in place of vaccine for a long time?
Well, I think there are many people that do that, especially healthcare workers and that in other parts of the world. So, yeah. and I think that's Dr. Corey's recommended regimen for prophylaxis. So, I mean, in terms of taking in place of vaccine, well, it seems to be as effective, and it's pretty safe, as you know.
Got it. And so there are so many questions. I see a question from Robin Hood. I'm seeing a question from MM. I'm seeing more questions. So guys, Cool Beans, please forgive us for the time reason. I'll take this as the last question. Then we would have the concluding remarks on Dr. Lawrie. We would request her to come back and continue going over the questions that we have. So Jody has a question. Is it possible the WHO is deterring us from using ivermectin because they're afraid?
I'm afraid you're frozen again.
And will be sorry. So can you see the question?
I can see you now.
Okay. So Jody's question is it possible that WHO is deterring us from using ivermectin because they're afraid West will hoard it and will be unavailable for Africa to treat river blindness?
No, Jody, I don't think that's the reason.
Yeah, I think it is very widely producible and easily available. So Dr. Lawrie, once again, thank you very much. Ready for what you were going to share.
Okay.
I love this one. Thank you so much for doing it. I love this. Thank you. If you like, please send it to me and I would upload it on Twitter and other places too. But this is great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So
it's kind of a series, so we're going to be keeping them coming out now, and people are welcome to share.
Awesome. So once again, thank you very much for your time. I know it is late there, hopefully early in the evening, right? Not too late.
Yeah, no, it's 6 o'clock.
And thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your data presentation. Thank you for nerding out with us about this. And the most important thing is thank you to highlight that this is a medicine that is saving lives and can save lives. And so we can have some data together that we can present with others. So thank you very much for coming in. Any concluding remarks?
I'm sorry, Doctor.
So any concluding remarks?
You're frozen. There you go. I've got you back.
Yeah. So any concluding remarks, and then we would go offline.
Well, I just want to say thanks for having me, and I'm sure next time I'll be able to share a bit more detail about what I think is going on.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Cool Beans, for your time, for listening to these videos. I know that usually these are a little longer, but I think these are packed full of information. So please like, subscribe, and share. And please do go to Dr. Lawrie's fundraiser, go to her site, support her in whatever way you can. She has taken the lead on this one. She is running with it. Let's join her. So thank you very much, and bye-bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.